Hi boys and girls, ready for chapter 6 today? I have our vocabulary word, which is a phrase, overheard conversation. Overheard is a verb that means to hear what other people are saying without meaning to. Conversation is a noun that means the act of talking together. So an overheard conversation is when people are talking and you hear what they are saying without meaning to. This is easy to do when you're in a room full of people and different conversations are happening around you. Sometimes when you overhear a conversation, you misunderstand what the people are talking about because you didn't hear the whole story. This can cause problems. An overheard conversation is when people are talking and you hear what they are saying without meaning to. So give me a thumbs up if you ever overheard a conversation. Okay, chapter 6 is titled An Overheard Conversation. Think about whether we learn anything that helps us narrow down our list of suspects, or maybe it will be the other way around. Maybe we'll have to add to the list. So I want to show you my story map and the characters. So we have a lot of characters here in our story, and hopefully you're able to keep track also, but I do have them listed here. So we're not sure if we're going to be able to narrow down our suspects or maybe need to add some more. Here we go, chapter 6. The next day, when the Aldens arrived at the museum, they found Sam carrying a large framed picture into the exhibit hall. "What's that?" Benny asked. The painting showed a group of Egyptian men and women. Their bodies were all turned sideways and looked stiff and angular. The edges of the painting under the glass were jagged and uneven. "It's a painting on papyrus," she said. "That's what the Egyptians used since they didn't have paper. Isn't it amazing how the colors have lasted for thousands of years?" "How beautiful," Violet said. She loved to paint and always enjoyed looking at artwork. "These paintings really make the exhibit complete," said Sam. "You see, the walls of the Egyptian tombs would have been covered with paintings depicting the dead person's life." "Did you talk to Pete last night about the missing pieces?" Jessie asked. "Yes," said Sam. "He's going to have new locks put on the doors and make sure the security guard comes by each night." "We'll catch the thief." She smiled at Jessie's concerned face. "Don't worry so much." "I just wish there was something I could do," Jessie began. "There is," Sam said. "Help me hang these paintings." The children spent the rest of the morning working with Sam. First, Sam selected 2 maps to be mounted on the wall. One was a map of the world showing the country of Egypt on the continent of Africa. "Egypt is on the other side of the world from our country," said Violet. I'm going to pause here for a second. Whenever I read about a real place, I like to find it on the map. So, since there's no map in our book, I'm going to show you the picture of the map. So Egypt is the dark colored on the continent of Africa. "It's near the equator, so it must be hot there," Henry pointed out. The other map showed the outline of ancient Egypt. "What's the big blue line?" Benny asked. "That's the Nile River," said Sam. "It was very important to the Egyptians. Egypt is a desert with very little rain. The people depended on the Nile for water to live and to grow their crops." They hung the 2 maps right by the entrance of the exhibit. Next, they put up an assortment of paintings that showed Egyptians in many different poses, eating, singing, dancing, and driving chariots. Other paintings depicted Egyptian gods. They had human bodies and some had the heads of animals. Some of the paintings had rows of tiny little pictures. "What are those?" asked Benny. "Those are hieroglyphics, a kind of Egyptian writing system," Sam said. "It was created over 5,000 years ago. The pictures might stand for a sound, a letter, or a whole word. Sam and the children stood in the center of the hall and looked around slowly. I'm going to get Pete to come up and see how great it looks, said Violet. I'll come with you, said Benny. The two went downstairs to Pete's office. His door was closed and it looked dark inside. Violet knocked. As the children waited for an answer, they couldn't help overhearing the conversation in Dr. Snood's office next door, as his door was open. I'm worried because Ms. Delaney, the director of the Carson City Museum, called again. They're quite upset over there, Dr. Snood was saying. What did she say? The children heard Pete ask. She said the Carson City Museum isn't happy about working with us on next year's festival. They feel we stole the Egypt exhibit away from them, said Dr. Snood. Violet and Benny looked at each other, their eyes wide. That's crazy, Pete was saying. Well, that's how they feel, said Dr. Snood. You know, for the past few years, we've always worked well with them. That is, before you started here and suggested this exhibit. Maybe there's something we can do, Pete suggested. You work on it, said Dr. Snood. His voice sounded angry. A moment later, Pete emerged from Dr. Snood's office. His face looked serious until he spotted the Aldens. Violet, Benny, Pete said with a smile. How's everything going? We've put up all the paintings. Want to come see? Violet asked. I'd love to, said Pete. He turned back into Dr. Snood's office. Reginald, would you like to come see how the Egyptian exhibit is going? I've got to make a phone call, Dr. Snood said. Then I'll come up for a quick look before my lunch meeting. When they entered the exhibit hall a few minutes later, Pete broke into a huge grin. This looks fantastic. I'm sure Dr. Snood will be pleased when he sees it. Sam, who had been waiting with Jessie and Henry, said, Oh, is he coming up? Yes, he said he'd come up for a few minutes before his lunch meeting, Pete said. Sam looked at her watch. Is it lunchtime already? I've got to run. Can't you stay for a few minutes to talk to Dr. Snood? Asked Pete. No, I'm meeting with the man who's designing the guide for the exhibit, and it may take all afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow. She went quickly into the prep room and grabbed her things. Then she was gone. Dr. Snood appeared in the doorway a moment later. He walked slowly around the room, looking at the freshly painted walls, the clean glass cases, and the paintings the children had helped put up. I must admit, it does look nice in here, he said in a tight voice, as if it were hard for him to say something nice. And where is Dr. Dickerson? Sam had to leave in a hurry, Pete explained. You'd think our expensive Egyptian expert could make time to meet with me. We're certainly paying enough, he said. Why are all the display cases empty? We just cleaned them yesterday, Jessie said. Sam is going to arrange the pieces soon. So I assume the artifacts are still in the prep room, Dr. Snood said, heading in that direction. Pete turned to the kids. I think he's pleased. You've done a great job. Why don't you take the afternoon off and we'll see you back here tomorrow? Okay, Violet said. The Aldens went into the prep room to get their backpacks. Dr. Snood was there, standing beside one of the tables of artifacts. He was holding one of the gold cat statues, turning it slowly around in his hands. He had a dreamy smile on his face, as if he were thinking of something far away. As the Aldens watched, he put down the cat and picked up a bright blue sculpture of a hippo. He must have felt the children's eyes on him, because he suddenly looked up. The look on his face changed abruptly. Now he looked as if he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't be. He quickly put the hippo down. You kids haven't been touching these, have you? Asked Dr. Snood. No, Henry began. Make sure you don't, said Dr. Snood in a stern voice, and make sure the lid is on that coffin. And make sure the lid on that coffin stays closed. Of course, said Jessie. Before she could say any more, he walked out. The audience stood still for a moment, stunned by Dr. Snood's harsh behavior. At last, Jessie said, "I don't know which was stranger, the way he was looking at those artifacts or the way he just spoke to us." "I don't know either," Henry agreed. "I wonder what he was thinking about when we first came in and he was holding the statues. It was as if he were in another world," said Violet. "And then he got so angry all of a sudden," said Jessie, "and we would never touch the artifacts." "Maybe Sam told him about the thief and so he's worried the pieces aren't safe," said Henry. "He doesn't seem to trust us much," Violet said. "There was something else too," Jessie said. "Did you notice how he called Sam our expensive Egyptian expert in that nasty tone?" "Sounds as if he's upset the museum is paying her so much money," Henry said. "Or maybe he's jealous," Violet suggested. "Remember, Pete," said Dr. Snood, "used to be leading expert on Egypt. Maybe he doesn't like the fact that Sam may know more than he does now." "You guys," Benny spoke up at last, "can we go? I want lunch." "Sure, Benny," Violet said. She and Henry picked up their backpacks, but Jessie was still digging around in her backpack when the others were ready to go. "What's the matter, Jessie?" Violet asked. "It's nothing. I just can't find—" She continued to dig in her backpack. At last she stood up, a puzzled look on her face. "It's not in there." "What's not in there?" asked Violet. "My notebook," said Jessie. "The one with the list of artifacts." "Are you sure you put it in your backpack?" Henry asked. "I think so," said Jessie. "Have you looked at it since yesterday?" Violet asked. "No," Jessie said, still puzzled. It wasn't like her to lose things. "Maybe you left it around here somewhere," Benny suggested. The children spent the next few minutes searching the prep room, under the tables, on Sam's desk, behind the coffin. Then they moved on to the exhibit hall and looked all over the room. The blue notebook was nowhere to be found. "Maybe you left it at home," said Violet. "I don't think so," said Jessie. "I didn't look at it there." Benny frowned. The mummy's curse strikes again. So as you reread, boys and girls, I want you to think about how strangely Sam is acting in this chapter. All right, we'll see you for our next chapter.